All right, everybody, welcome to the Gamernomicon podcast. We're not going to date the episodes anymore. So this just exists in time that we won't speak of.
I don't date episodes anyway.
So
at least for now, not until we get a good structure of this.
Dirty thieves.
Once
we get a good time frame, because it's been I don't know how long since our last episode.
Don't put the bottle in front of your mouth.
I can put the bottle in front of my mouth.
Don't put the bottle in front of your mouth.
They can still hear me though.
I mean, sure, but it's gonna sound like you have a bottle in front of your mouth.
It's not that big of a deal.
Okay.
We're using one mic.
Hey.
The audio's not gonna be.
I'm the mic.
Let's make the audio as good as we can get it. All right. So we had a topic that we were talking about quite extensively before we started this podcast. I guess the best way I could phrase it is, how do you define, what do you consider a JRPG or an RPG in general? And we threw around a bunch of terms and a bunch of different video games, and we came to Kingdom Hearts. In Kingdom Hearts, you said, Jeff said, that in his mind it doesn't seem like an RPG, or at least that's not, explain your point of view on the thing.
It's really basic. The point of view that I'm coming from is that growing up, there were certain type of games that it wasn't as mashed up as they are now, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you had your beat 'em ups, you had your shooters I don't know, like Shadow Colossus, or not Shadow Colossus, Streets of Rage. You had Streets of Rage,
the shooter.
You have Streets of Rage, and then but you even had games later on that were like Sin of Punishment or something. Like they were one type of game and that was it. Like you played that as it is, and it wasn't like they had all these different elements. Like they weren't trying to group up a bunch of different ideas in one.
Yeah, there's a lot of games these days that have elements of multiple genres of games in them, as opposed to in the past. A platformer was a platformer.
Yes, and growing up, RPGs were its own thing. You play RPG, you expected a certain type of thing. Growing up in the late '90s or whatever, right?
Right.
So if you thought RPG in the late '90s, you thought of like Final Fantasy, or you thought of Wild Arms, Wild Arms series. Like you thought of those type of games, which happen to be Japanese games, which throws out the term JRPGs. And when I hear JRPG, that is the first thing that I think of every single time. It's just a turn-based type of role-playing game.
Well, you said back in the 90s, and RPGs have evolved since then, right?
Sure, but that's my idea of a JRPG. But also people don't use the term JRPGs as much as they used to. Because, if you were to think of, how many JRPGs do you really see in that same context that are based off that same type of formula that come out now, that are big? That make it into the same realm of Final Fantasy 13.
What is Dragon Quest is still throwing around a lot, right?
Yeah,
they're still making new ones and
what other?
I don't know how do people play Xenosaga? I haven't played it, so I don't know. But I know there's Xenosaga, and then there's
Xenoblade Chronicles. Yeah, that's not really.
Are you just asking about JRPGs in general? Because there's still Star Ocean. There's still
yes,
Automata.
There are, but they're not most of the. There was a lot of different JRPGs that came out at that time. Not saying there aren't a lot that are still coming out, but there were a lot that came out at that time that stood in front of everything else. Those were, when you saw RPGs, you thought of those type of games. What was it? What was that? 1,000 Arms or whatever? I don't remember. It's 1,000 something. It was one of those RPGs from the 90s. I can't remember. But my idea from growing up like that to now is that when I hear JRPG, my first thought is to think of a turn-based Japanese RPG style type of game. It has sort of the anime elements to it, something like that. It looks like something that would come out of their culture.
Japan.
Yeah. Suikoden kind of does that, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was also a game from the 90s and stuff too.
Yeah.
So it's that's what I see.
Right. And I guess where where I was coming from in relation to that is that what makes a JRPG a JRPG is often not so much the elements of the gameplay, but the content of the story. Is that there's a lot of Dragon Age is a Western RPG, right?
Yes.
And so what's the story of Dragon Age? You're you become a Grey Warden and you have to like.
It was a really political kind of game.
Yeah, right. Like, and like that's the story, and it's like stop the blight. It's not bad. Like, I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that. I mean, I have my problems with that game, but that's a topic for another day that have nothing to do with the story of the game. It's about the gameplay of the game.
I learned. I'll say I learned from past statements about games I like. So continue.
Yeah, any game that Jeff likes, you might as well just take it with a grain of salt. Just look into it first. You know?
Continue.
See if it has any bugs before you pick it up.
Hey, let's not go there. Continue.
Okay. So.
How about a ladder?
So. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing that comes through.
A ladder?
So you can get off my back. Yeah. It's the same thing that comes through in like anime as well. Like one of the reasons why anime is so different from American cartoons is not only just the way it looks, but the content of the story. It deals with a lot more serious topics. Like anime is definitely for like teens and adults, whereas a lot of American cartoons are for children. And Western RPGs have certain things that they're all about. I honestly can't think of too many that I can use as examples. I mean, all I really have is like
that you played.
Yeah, that at least I played. You know.
Because I mean, there's also the Mass Effect games. There's legit Western RPGs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have like just about anything that Bethesda makes and BioWare makes.
Oh yeah, Skyrim.
Oh,
Skyrim.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, that
so
makes
yeah,
sense.
like Skyrim, right? Skyrim as well is it's very like it's very light on story. Like story is there, like and it has interesting stories or cool stories, but it's not really the same as like a Final Fantasy game where like
it's because it's not linear. That's the big thing.
Well, yeah,
That's what I feel like
there's
that
lots
may
of
be.
differences
Yeah.
between the two of them. You know.
I think it's just a lot more loose. Loose is the better word to use.
Yeah,
than light.
I mean, sure. Yeah, it's just a lot general, you know. Yeah, loose is a good term.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Like when I think of JRPG, it's about the RPG element, which is one of the things that we were talking about, is like what makes something an RPG. Because technically speaking, RPG meaning like role-playing game, to play a role. Like any game that has a story that where you play as a character fits into the the statement of RPG or that type of game. But what makes a game like Crash Bandicoot, where you're technically playing the role of Crash Bandicoot, different from Final Fantasy, where you're playing, you know, why is one an RPG and one a platformer? And that's what we were talking about. Like, and my response to that was, if you played Crash Bandicoot, you can play the entire game of Crash Bandicoot without ever, like, watching any of the cutscenes, and it doesn't matter. Like, the gameplay is central to that game. The game is about that gameplay. Whereas a Final Fantasy game, and in my opinion, JRPGs are sort of all about the story. Like, you could take all of the story out of those games, and you would just have like a combat system that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, not something that you can build, you know, hours of gameplay off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, so an RPG to me, it refers to the story being the central, important part of that game, which in Kingdom Hearts, I would say that it would be.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Walking Dead series of games? Because you're playing like the role of Lee forever, and but it's like, so the story also, I think that the story
also a separate genre in itself as well.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is well, there's not really as much character progression in that game as there is in other ones. However, like the story does affect the characters. Like if you choose. Spoiler alert, if you choose to cut your arm, later on climbing a ladder is like infinitely harder.
Spoiler
but
alert,
it's
right to the end of the game.
Hey, I mean, not everybody. I haven't played Shadow Colossus. How old is that? You know what I'm saying? So like and there's some people who haven't seen. Hey, I have nothing. Look, I have nothing.
Keep bringing it up until he plays it, and you have to play it because there's a new one coming out.
Yeah. Okay. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Well, it's a remake.
Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is like just because the game's gold doesn't mean that people haven't played it yet, or that everybody's played it. But what I'm saying is like so when you have let's say Final Fantasy VII, for instance, right? It's like, yeah, so there's a story, but does the story really affect your gameplay? Yes, because spoiler alert, Aerith dies. For everybody who's planning on getting the Final Fantasy VII later on, Aerith dies. She's no longer in your party, and that does affect your gameplay. Like, oh crap, one of my main like players is just no longer there. So it's like the story does. But with Crash Bandicoot, first of all, since you're playing just him, he doesn't get like an eye patch or whatever. Like there's nothing that, like where you do get cool abilities though, which is nice, but you don't you really earn the abilities.
The progression is different in that game. The progression isn't about how the character like looks in terms of items or movesets or whatever they get. It's more so the progression through what they're trying to do in terms of where they're going in that world. So if you're moving and progressing in the world, that's still a form of progression, and still I wouldn't consider that an RPG though.
It's a muddy term.
I mean, are we talking about character progression in terms of like leveling up and gaining abilities, or are we talking about emotional progression in terms of the story and the events inside of this world affecting a character's growth as a person?
Well, even still, like bringing back Final Fantasy VII, that like destroyed Cloud, right? When Aerith died, and it just destroyed it, man. Yeah. Like, and that's his emotional progression. But at the same time, you as a player, you're like, oh man, I really liked her, and then now she's just gone. Like, there's no like, she didn't have cancer and was on her way out. She's just gone, and you have to like deal with that and move forward.
Yeah, there's both emotional progression as well as like character growth in terms of like leveling up and things like that and getting stats. It's both. And that's typical of like a JRPG or really an RPG in general. So like character progression is an element of RPGs, like both emotional and I guess physically, strength-wise or ability-wise. But you can have other games that have character progression in them that aren't considered RPGs. Like
like Shadow of the Colossus. In its way, I mean, what happens to the character and how
is not considered RPG.
Yeah.
Well, wait. But I'm saying is that does it really have character progression in it? Because
yes.
He doesn't really like.
You were talking about earlier.
But he has character progression. He
gets heavier every time he gets up.
And then what happens to him with the horse?
You don't feel it outside of the story much.
That's not so much character progression as it is like
it's taking a toll.
The actions of what he's doing take a toll. He is the same character in the end of that game as he is in the beginning. He doesn't emotionally progress. He goes into there with one goal and ends with one goal. Like with that same goal, and he doesn't gain any new abilities or strengths as the game goes along.
Yes, but I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, but in my eyes, for him, he was more so progressing in a way where it's like he didn't have like the emotions coming from behind it, but you saw the toll that what he was doing was taking on him.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like the same like emotional standpoint, but it was still something that he's doing within the world, and you see the reason of how that is affecting him in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it counts.
What if they added microtransactions?
We got to stop talking about Shadow of the Colossus.
Well, I mean, that's
a big topic, but it's one that
there's nothing bad about that at that moment.
Yeah, we were just the RPGs where they stand and I think it's a muddy term nowadays. Back then, it used to mean your turn-based style of combat. Even before it was video games, when it was like a tabletop. When it was like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, there was turn-based. You roll to determine your turns, and like the enemies have their own turns. And then it's like I think that's how it used to be. But I think it's evolved and it's a muddy term now.
Yes, and that's why I wouldn't go to saying. I understand people would say that Kingdom Hearts is a JRPG. I get it, but from traditional of how I grew up with JRPGs being a certain term used for certain types of games, it wouldn't fall into that category. Right. And that's all. That's all I'm trying to point out.
So like subjectively, I mean, it's your subjective opinion.
Exactly.
You know, you're like, this is how I grew up. This is the way I saw games as I grew up. These are the games that I played, and this informs my opinion. Yeah. And I think where we are at now in the conversation is that like nowadays gaming in general is much bigger than what it was before. The capabilities of games are much greater than they were before, and you have a lot of games that blend and mix. Yeah. Different things. So you could consider Kingdom Hearts an RPG, and you understand that. I could also consider Kingdom Hearts hack and slash, which it has. Yeah. And that's one of the things.
It's the X button, boy.
Does it count as a hack and slash? And so I guess the broad topic then becomes how do you define what a game is? In terms of its
maybe what it primarily does. Then
we'll leave that up to the comments down below.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. If anybody wants to input, that'd be great.
Chime in on it, man.
Because. Like we looked up the definition of we looked up the definition of hack and slash, and a hack and slash, I think Google defined it as any game that has where the combat is
Yeah,
the central point of the
central
game.
point.
For example, like Super Mario is a platformer because the game is the platformer.
It's mostly platformers.
Yeah,
you do
that's how
jump
you
on
play the
But
enemies.
then
games,
there's
you know?
gray areas where you play games like your ukulele. Like that's a mixture of platform and combat. So it's
Right.
like which one does really fall into at that point?
Well-
Because
well,
I mean, you
this
would
is like
normally
action,
you
probably.
would normally go to saying
An action
like those type of
platformer.
games are in a way platformers, but there's also quite a bit of combat in there as well.
I mean, sure, but like I would consider it a platformer specifically because even the bosses involve platforming to fight them. Like just because you have an attack
Not that much.
function, at least the one that I watched you fight.
The first one,
Yeah.
where you had to go.
Yeah,
the only
up the hill.
platform that you're doing is just jumping
Well,
onto
you're
that
jumping
one part.
over obstacles. I mean, that's
Sure.
that's platforming.
Yeah, yes.
Well, I
Like,
think
yes.
it's well.
But you're also doing that at Devil May Cry when you fight bosses too.
What Devil May Cry?
I mean,
you
not
play that
obstacles,
has-
but like you're jumping over like certain abilities and moves. Like
yeah.
that's what's
Well,
happening.
yeah,
like,
well, sure,
like
but
the
that's more
boss
like
battle.
dodging an attack than it is platforming. You know, like
Well, in the first boss where you're jumping over the logs, that's not really a platform because it's one flat stage. So in that way, it's not really a platform. You are jumping over the logs, you're jumping over the attacks or whatever, which you don't have to jump over. You can walk
Yeah,
around
which
them
I
until
was doing
it
forever,
becomes
and it was super frustrating.
But I think it's like in the case of ukulele and like let's say Banjo Kazooie and stuff like that is you'll jump over 10 platforms before you fight like an enemy.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's like it's more platform
Yeah, you're
centric
doing-
than enemies. Like
Yes.
yeah, there's action, but it's I would
I
label
agree
a
with
game
that.
as a platformer because it's like so then
Yeah.
how do you RPG more than another? You know, I don't know.
Well,
That's why
see,
that
that's
one's
the thing.
hard.
You brought up the Walking Dead games, right? Those are technically point and click.
Yeah.
Like because yes, it has a story, but the way that you play the game is point and click.
Yeah.
Now you can go back to the original Final Fantasy games. Technically, they're they're RPGs, absolutely, but they're specifically turn-based RPGs. And like I said, the term RPG, like you said, goes back beyond
It's
video
evolved
gaming.
since then.
You know, it goes
Yeah,
back
well,
to
yeah.
like tabletop gaming and things like anytime where you play a role-playing game. Like but then like
It changes quite a bit once you put into this next genre where it's like it's
Right.
not during like you're not playing Dungeons and Dragons here. You're playing video games. They use the same type of terms, but they don't mean the exact same thing.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
where the problem comes
right.
in.
So like a JRPG only refers to the fact that it was made in Japan.
Yes.
A turn-based RPG refers to the fact that you play it because it is a turn-based game
Yes.
that is also an RPG.
Yeah.
Like and
action RPG.
right, and then you
Tactical
have an
RPG,
action
yeah.
RPG, and then you could have. I mean,
It's a
really, you could
first-person
have
shooter
you could have a
RPG.
platform
That'd be
RPG. You,
no,
well, that's the thing.
that's
you could,
Borderlands is technically in
Yeah.
that
Okay.
yeah,
cool.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so
RPG just wants to love everybody, man. Love
Yeah.
every
yeah, so
genre.
like anything can be an RPG. I mean, given enough, like you could argue that
I guess-
the story mode of Call of Duty is a RPG,
I guess
is
it's
a
like-
shooter RPG.
You do level up and
How
unlock new
important
weapons and
RPG.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
guess it comes to how
And
important
abilities.
are those elements within the gameplay.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like the reason why people may say Borderlands is more of an RPG is because when I think you level up your characters.
You
well
do
in that
level up
game,
your characters,
and
and you get new
level up
moves and
like
stuff,
new
too.
weapons and all that stuff, and it's like it has those RPG elements.
yeah,
You're getting
those
loot.
really classical
But then
RPG.
you play another
elements.
shooter like Call of Duty or Battlefield or something where it's like
Which
you
has some
take out,
RPG elements.
but it's not as prominent
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
that. So it's
Yeah.
like it's more of a shooter in that case. So,
Yeah,
I guess
so-
it depends on like you hit a certain percentage and then it's like all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
you qualify at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
to be
it's the
called
same
that.
thing.
It's-
It's the
yeah.
same thing what restaurants do with their food, man. Like
Yeah.
as long as it's 51% beef, it counts as beef.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
there you
and
go.
that's true. Like look it
Yeah.
up, lowercase.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, no, that's I think that's what it comes down to is that games nowadays are often a mixture of multiple things, and really you only define a game based on what is most prominent in the game, or
Yeah.
what if you took away would it be a completely different game, you know?
Yeah. I like the idea of what you were saying before as well as like if you were to take away everything from the game. So that's like again Kingdom Hearts to bring that back up.
Yeah.
The reason why I wouldn't consider that an RPG by that statement is because if you take away if the game came out without a story at all, original Kingdom Hearts, no story, nothing like that, I feel like the
confused as
gameplay.
hell.
Well, okay, not as heavy
Well,
of a
it'd
story.
still be cool. It'd be you running around
why is
fighting
this
enemies
kid-
in,
who
is this
in
kid?
Disneyland.
Not heavy,
I mean,
like
in
so you have a
Disney
beginning cutscene.
places.
You have a beginning cutscene,
Hey,
and then
kid,
you
what
play
you
the
doing,
game,
Doctor? Oh,
and it's like you
yeah.
have text that may come up,
It would be,
but that's about it.
It
Like
would
in an old
establish,
school way.
yeah, it would establish your motivation at the beginning. Save the princess, and then everything
Yeah,
else is just
and then
levels
things just happen.
until you
Yeah.
get to save the princess.
Yeah, and it's like if the game was just like that, the gameplay holds up pretty well in my eyes.
right, exactly.
So where I can
in
still
like
have fun, not for 15, 20 hours,
right.
but a good amount of time I can have fun playing that.
Right, but if you did
Yeah.
that to a Final Fantasy game where you took out all
Yeah.
the story and it was just here's
Like
turn-based
Final Fantasy
combat
7
for,
or something like
for
that.
7
No.
hours,
Mm-mm.
a lot of people wouldn't, and
It'll be
yeah,
boring.
that was one of the big criticisms with Final Fantasy in the first place, which is why the new Final Fantasy games have definitely started.
Yeah, starting from like 12.
Yeah,
12 on up has
right. And
changed quite a bit.
now that we bring that up, I think that actually perfectly slides into the other topic that we had about improvements.
Oh yeah,
I think
improvements.
that's a perfect segue into improvements because if we continue with the topic of the Final Fantasy games, right? Like one of the biggest complaints for Final Fantasy games was that a lot of people really could not get into the turn-based RPG. The idea of like wait and then attack and then wait and then attack or whatever just doesn't sit well with a lot of people.
People want to play a game at their
I don't-
pace and not someone else's pace.
I don't feel that way though.
I never had
Like,
a problem with
I,
that.
Yeah,
I, I,
not
have,
everybody
I have,
does.
like, I never went to
Gives
a
you time
Final
to think.
Fantasy game. Yeah, I never went to a Final Fantasy game wanting to be able to just mindlessly attack the boss. Like,
Yeah.
I figured, because I watched people play it a lot before I even got into RPGs. Like, Chris, he played the game quite a bit, and I would always just sit there and watch it for like an hour or so. It's like, I mean, I would love to play the game. RPGs weren't for me at that time, and then when I started playing them even a little bit, it's just I expected and wanted that kind of feedback where it's like you have the linear progression of the story. You explore the area, you talk to different people, blah blah blah, and then you have your fights that you go into randomly. I wanted those type of fights to occur because it just had a certain kind of.
Random enemy
It made me feel like I was playing an RPG and not just any other game.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah, no,
Random
I
customer
always
encounters.
loved the turn-based combat of the Final Fantasy games. I never had a problem with it.
yeah, yeah.
But the
brother
topic
did.
was yeah, exactly, right. So the topic was improvements. So
improvements that you play a game and then you play a game that is the successor or sequel to that game. Improvements that you like or maybe dislike that not so it wouldn't be an improvement, but
yeah.
things that are changed that you like or dislike about other games.
changes that were made to a game, like or dislike, go right.
Yeah.
And
Sorry.
a big one is if you look at the Final Fantasy games, like I do not remember too much of the first of the ones before 4 because I did not play them all the way through. But I beat 4. I never beat 5 and 6. But all of them from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, all of them have bars that have to fill up, which I believe are in relation to your speed. So the faster your character is, the faster that bar fills up, and then your turn goes. And this is how so many of them function. But in Final Fantasy X, they changed it from an ATB system to a CTB system. And one of the things that did is instead of having a bar that fills up in order for
It's
you
just
to go,
automatically
it's just a turn order based on speed.
Yeah.
Fastest characters go first, next, all the way down, and it gives you your turn order, and you just go. And I think that was a massive improvement on the original system.
That's how it was in 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think no, actually 1, 2, and 3. I think 4 added the ATB, and then the remake of 3 went back and they added in the ATB.
Yeah. Like I said,
But
I
1
don't
and 2
remember
were
the-
just they were turn based on speed.
Yeah,
and
I
if
don't-
you use haste, you're faster, so you
Yeah.
attack first, or sometimes
yeah. So I
more
guess
times.
in that instance it would be a change that they
So
went back to.
why was that an improvement though?
Well, because what would happen is a lot of times there would be dead time in a battle where you're waiting for your bar to fill up,
Yeah.
and you just can't do anything. You're like, well, I'm just waiting for my character to go, so that I can do something. But the CTB gauge, the CTB combat just eliminates that completely.
So do you think that was more so a fault in terms of like the system or a fault in terms of how the game was designed? Because I found a lot of times where like you have that bar filling up, sometimes the enemy would attack, depending on who you're fighting. Sometimes they wouldn't attack.
Yeah, depending on the
So it's
depending
like-
on the because the enemies all have their own bars too. You just
Yeah.
can't see them.
But it's so it's like So what would happen in that case? I mean, maybe it was more so just more like maybe just the design, the full design didn't play out right.
Yeah.
Like the system wasn't bad. It just wasn't.
Don't know.
It just wasn't tweaked to the point where it can be so fluid.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. Like I don't know why they started with the ATB gauge in the first place. I guess maybe it was a convenient way to show the player like when you're gonna go or what's going on, or to be able to time things. But again, you couldn't really see the enemy's ATB gauges, so you didn't know. With Final Fantasy X, you can see your turn order.
Yeah,
like
for everybody.
so you know when the enemies are gonna go, and that allows you. It gives you this whole other dimension of strategy.
To go about fighting, yeah.
Like I know that this turn is the last turn I get before the enemy goes. So if I know, before I had to guess. Like Final Fantasy VII had a block, right? You could jump back and forth between the front row and the and the back row and reduce damage. But when to do that was like a guessing game. You didn't
that's
really
why
know.
they did that. Is to force you to kind of try to to eliminate that. Because maybe when people were playing 1 and 2, it got to the point where people they were destroying the game because they figured out that system and how it worked, and it's just like they wouldn't be adventurous and wouldn't try anything else.
Right.
But having that system in there forced you to try to do things that you may not be 100% sure it's going to work, and then all of a sudden it did. Right. And then it's like, all right, cool, I'm safe. It gave more attention to the battle.
Yeah.
Than this one, in terms of Final Fantasy X. Not saying there isn't any tension, but there's less tension in terms of you making your decisions.
It allows you to make more informed decisions.
Yeah, so it's like you're making
coming,
decisions where you're more confident what's going to happen. Whereas this one, you were unsure of the effects of your decision you're making.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's probably the whole purpose of having that system in there.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know. We don't know unless we talk to them. Who made it. But I definitely like the system in Final Fantasy X better. I think it gets rid of all the dead time.
Yeah, it's better.
It's just faster, quicker, more fluid combat. You get to go, and then your enemies go and you can plan accordingly. You even have moves that alter the time. Like you can have quick hit, which will make your next turn come faster, or you have delay attack, which can push back the enemy's turn. Haste and slow and things like that. And they actually do something as opposed to some of the Final Fantasy games status changing magic is pointless. Like you never need to use Final Fantasy 7 and 8. I don't think I ever used blind or slow or poison or anything like that. Well, I use poison at 8 because humans are weak to poison, but
everything's weak to poison.
Yeah, well, not in Final Fantasy games.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing. That's definitely mine. And we were talking about turn-based combat. I've definitely noticed that since Final Fantasy 12, maybe 11, because I didn't play 11. That was the first online one.
That was the online one.
Yeah.
So maybe since 11, maybe with 12 they took some of the things that they learned from 11 and put it into 12. I don't know.
Boat
I don't know.
Well, Dissidia was nice too. I mean, it was a Final Fantasy game where it was a combat game, but you were able to move freely and attack and jump freely and do.
And then, but I would say more so just the number series because that's more where you can see that.
Series.
Well, in terms of that's straight RPG.
Yeah.
Not like the
MMO
MMORPG because MMO is is a whole different design. Entirely to how the game functions.
Right.
So the combat wasn't going to be the same.
But all I'm saying is that Final Fantasy XII's combat feels a lot like an MMO to me, in all of the worst ways. And what I mean by that is specifically I get that a lot of people did not like turn-based RPGs. They didn't like the turn-based system, right?
Yeah.
So Final Fantasy XII was the first one that I played where it really felt like they were trying to break away from that turn-based system. It was the first Final Fantasy where you could have complete control over the way your character moves in combat. But here's why I dislike that change, is because it doesn't do anything. Take Final Fantasy XIV. When an enemy attacks, sometimes you get the little area of effect on the ground, and you can move out of the way. That wasn't in 12.
You could hit something and run 200, 20 yards away and still get hit by
still get hit by their attack.
Exactly.
The enemies would have an attack animation, but the actual attack would still apply damage to you, even if you were nowhere near them.
If you did a bite and you were behind the enemy, you'll still get hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. There were some occasions where if you were far enough away or directly behind them, their attack animation would finish before their attack actually hits you, and it would miss. But that's rare. That doesn't really happen too often. and it makes the combat strange and weird. And it's like you can run around, but it means nothing. You know, I have this control that does nothing for me, you know, and I still have to get up to him and attack, and then at that point, I'm just waiting for my bar to fill up and attack. And they went back to the bar, like, so you have to wait for your bar to fill up and then go. And in order to alleviate some of the switching around with the menus, now that you have control of your character walking and everything, they made the gambit system, where you can specifically, I mean, the gambit system in terms of what it's supposed to do, which is allow the computer to control your characters for you.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it works really well. It's really specific and intuitive, and it makes sense if you take the time to get to, you know, to understand it. And you're like, oh, okay, things at the top go first, things at the bottom are last. You put all your heal stuff up there, you put all your attack stuff down there. You know, it makes sense, and you can build it exactly the way you want it. But here's my problem with that, is that if I set up all my gambit systems, I'm not playing the game anymore. I'm just letting the computer play the game for me.
Well, no, you're playing the. You're more of the strategist. Like you're the army. Fuck, I don't know.
The general.
Yeah, you're the general,
you're
and you're telling. Yes, you're telling your. So you're still doing something, and they're still doing it for you.
And my problem with that is that means that playing Final Fantasy 12 is like pressing the up button on the controller. And all my job is to walk through the world. They do the combat on their own. The story happens on its own. I don't do anything. I put the controller down, or at least use my big toe to move, and I can play that game perfectly fine.
In a lot of RPGs, and Tales of Phonia does this as well. You can set it to where all the characters auto fight for you, and then all you have to do is you go into the fight and you just let it happen.
Sure.
And you can set them up like
because it's
I want
optional, right?
Yes.
Now in Final Fantasy 12, you don't have to use the gambit system. You can have the game pause whenever it's your turn.
But you're going to use that gambit system.
Yeah, you're going to use the gambit system. Because trying to play the game the original way, which I have tried, I really tried, because I wanted to play it the original way. I didn't want to use the gambit system. I've tried to go in and select everybody's turn, but it is so difficult and tedious and frustrating. It does not work. You can't really play that game like that unless you are determined to play the game that way, in which case it's probably going to be less fun than if you just let the gambit system do it.
See, maybe if they would have went to more of like the Tales style of how that you're set in like a certain box, and you can only really you can move in a circle, but is set to like you're moving basically left and right.
Yeah.
But on a plane.
Yeah,
So
sure.
it's in this one, in 12, because you can move freely, it's just about anywhere you want to go.
Right.
It added so much more difficulty in terms of positioning.
And like I said, if I could move and dodge the attacks, then at least that would be something. I'd have to control the characters. Like, sure, I'm not controlling the actions, but I'm controlling their movements, and that matters. But it doesn't. So what am I doing? You know, I'm not doing anything. You know.
True.
So that's an example of, like, with Final Fantasy games, a change that I really liked, and then a change that I really did not like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, that was a long example.
Yeah, it was.
We're
at the third round.
We're at
this guy
time,
over here.
but I like talking about Final Fantasy games. So I mean, we can.
I'm just gonna list off a couple of.
It doesn't matter. They can sit and listen to us for an hour.
Yeah. Well, look.
I love you. Don't leave.
Yeah, well, like a couple of other like things that just a couple of short ones, like how in Call of Duty where it's just like at first sometimes you would shoot a guy and then you'd run away and then he'd shoot you in the back and you're like, what? I thought I killed him. You'd be upset because you're like, I could have sworn I killed him. That should have been enough damage. But in a lot of the newer ones, they changed the kill hit marker system, so it's like it's the kill color. So it's like when you hit them, the last the bullet that actually kills them is going to be an orange hit marker instead of the regular white hit marker. And I think they do the same thing in Battlefield.
You can change it. You have to manually change it in Battlefield.
Yeah, but even
you can
still,
make it. You can make a headshot a different color, and you can make a kill shot a different color.
Yeah, and that's nice because what that is you know exactly where you want to hit. Yeah, you know that they're.
You can make it any color you want to.
Well, I'm just saying that that's a nice improvement because it's like there's been a lot of times where I'll shoot at a guy and I'm like, okay, yeah, he's dead, and then I'll move on to the next person and then the person will kill me. So then what it does is it forces you to play a certain way where you're like, okay, now I have to make sure he's dead. You know, the double tap, and that cuts the gameplay, especially when you have an objective you have to get to in objective game modes or whatever. You want to make sure that person is dead, but then you're like, okay, my team needs me over here at the B flag, but I'm standing here after a couple seconds making sure he's gone. It's like, oh, he's dead. Okay, and then I can move on. When with the hit marker change color, it just goes and it's like, okay, yeah, he's gone, and then you can move on to the next objective. I think that was a nice improvement. It's so small, but it helps out so much.
You don't realize until you start thinking, like playing in Black Ops 3. It's like, yeah, I really don't stop shooting at a person when I know I'm about to like beat them in that battle. It's like, all right, I'm about to beat this guy. Okay, I did. I got the signal showing that, all right, cool. I got the little marker. Now I can just go quickly start attacking the next person.
Yeah,
like that is a good feature.
Especially if you're fighting two people at once, you're like, you don't want to go and then like fight him for the second half, and then you like go back to the you're dead at that point.
What's happening is like you get used to the time to kill for the weapon that you're using, and you start expecting people to be dead within that time to kill. But because it's Call of Duty, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes your time to kill will change, and if you shoot someone and you're like, oh, okay, they should be dead now, but they're not, you don't know. But now that they've added that hit marker, now you know when they're dead.
And just that extra, there's probably not even a real word, reassurability. Extra reassurance. That that's the word. Reassurability. Use it. Put it on a t-shirt. Hashtag reassurability. Post hashtag reassurability on our Facebook page, Gamernomicon. That's a feature.
Plug. 30-something minutes left.
So another.
It's dimming.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
so another thing that will be an improvement over games is like so the first two Pokemon games, right? You play and then you get the bike, and the bike allows you to move faster. And when I don't know
how to spell
he was trying to figure out how to spell it. Like,
reassurability. So like but then
yeah, but are the E and the A still next to each other, or can I use the A to replace the E?
They're right next to each other.
It's exactly how it sounds. But like so like in the third Pokemon the third generation, I should say, so not third Pokemon game, because that'd be like yellow.
Yeah, so what was third generation? You talking about Ruby and Sapphire?
Ruby and Sapphire. And Ruby and Sapphire they added they added the running shoes.
Yeah.
Which was nice. It was a nice step in between.
You could do a wheelie on the bike.
You can, the acro bike.
Didn't
the two bikes.
that one also have weather?
And had weather?
It had weather.
Yeah.
It got rid of
day and night.
It got rid of day and night.
Yeah.
Silver and gold had day and night.
So we have weather, but it's all day, all the time, 24/7, 100 years.
100 years?
Silver and gold had like 3 times a day. It had morning, afternoon, and night, and then they got rid of all that, and they added a couple of other features in the new Pokemon, but the one I'm really focusing on is the running shoes, because when you're exploring this world, you can't really like go any faster until you get to this bike, which sometimes you have to do a little side quest or to even be able to do
bike costs
to
like
use
$1
the bike.
million.
Yeah,
was Silver the one where it played off of like your actual time zone sometimes?
Yeah.
So like where you were playing the game, if it was nighttime,
it took your internal
nighttime.
clock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could, but you can change that up too. If you're like, oh man, I'm only up at this certain time of day.
If you want to do the Pokemon bug
yeah.
catching contest, you could just make it Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday or Thursday.
No, I waited.
But you only. Well, see, that's the thing. Like
properly.
you have to do that at the beginning. Like they tell you to set the clock and day at the beginning, and then after that, everything is set.
No,
So
you can change it. You can change it whenever you want. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, cool. But yeah, I think it was just a nice feature.
Now.
Nice feature to add the running shoes, and it was a nice feature to add the hit marker. Same thing with going back to Kingdom Hearts, the reaction commands. They're nice.
That was a nice feature.
Yes, because they do break up.
Yeah.
They do
a
break
lot of
up.
People don't like reaction commands too.
Dude, that was.
I don't even think there's going to be any new ones.
Well, see, but the thing about it is you never had to use them.
Yeah.
You never had to use a reaction command, but it was cool that they were there, because when it came to the first Kingdom Hearts, it was more what we were talking about earlier, X button, X button. But the reaction commands made you stop and be like, I can kill him this way, or I could, instead of just killing him this way, I could use him as a laser to destroy all the other enemies.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So
it gives you options.
Yes, and that was a nice feature. So it wasn't just like something cool that you could actually do. Like it was things, especially when you have to fight those 1,000 Heartless in the pit. You're really fighting 1,000, and
yeah, that was a great part.
Yeah, and it's like, how do I fight 1,000? Without this being, it's like, oh, you just grab the laser one and then you can hit all of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, the reaction commands are fun, especially with and then like the big body reaction command, you put your hand on his face and you're like.
And like Streets of Rage, you did the same thing where you had the regular, the regular fighting system. You punch them, you jump, you can grapple them. But then they added specials. But even those specials, they took a part of your health.
Yeah.
But they also did a
That was in
ton of
two,
more
right?
damage.
Yeah.
When they added, it did a ton more damage. It made the gameplay a lot more entertaining, a lot more fun.
Yeah.
It looked cooler. So I mean, it's the same thing.
It gave you, it was a cool improvement.
Yeah.
I liked
that was mostly it.
I
The
liked
game. But the decrease for the successor in terms of the
From
same
2 to 3?
series.
From 2 to 3?
No, from 3 to what was supposed to be 4.
Oh, you're talking about he's talking about Fighting Force.
Fighting Force.
Fighting
I was talking about Fighting Force. Fighting Force,
Fighting
the
Force.
best game
Oh
ever.
my god.
The best game.
Oh.
The best game. Well, okay, I don't know about the best
jeez.
game.
No, you said it. It's already.
It's a good game.
You said it's the
I
best game.
don't know
That's
if
what
it's
you
the
said.
best game. I mean, Shadow of the
You said
Colossus
it.
is a good game.
You said,
Like,
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
That's my favorite game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's other best games. I mean, like Final Fantasy X is my favorite game. That's the best game ever.
Shoot, my favorite's
But
Earthbound, boy.
Fighting
There
Force is a good game.
No.
Yeah,
No.
Fighting Force is a good game.
No, well,
No.
Didn't we look it up? Didn't we look it up?
We're gonna prove
And everybody
this.
gave it like a 5 out of 10,
We're
5 or
gonna-
6
it
or
had,
7.
it had a 7
No,
out of 10 too.
It was mixed
Yeah,
reviews.
that's what I'm saying. 5, 6, and 7.
It
It
was,
was
it was
like,
mixed reviews. It got
but they
mixed
never,
reviews.
but they
It's a
never
good
got,
game.
they never were really good, and they never were really low.
Yeah, it was like
It's a
it
good
really.
game.
I won't
It's
say
an okay game.
You know, it's a good game.
Sure, I would go with okay.
No, it looked
Okay.
okay.
A lot of those
Okay.
were like 3s out of 5s.
No, I mean that's still middle.
60%.
That's a good.
And
It
then
could be a
some
good
were
game.
below that.
What's
Some
your
were like
son
5
comes
out
We're
of
gonna,
10.
we're gonna play this. We're gonna play this game.
Yes, we
We're
are.
We're gonna play this game.
Wait
Yes,
till
we
your
are.
son
Alright.
comes
Alright.
home
But
with
like the reason why I would say it's not a good game in terms of what it was supposed to be, because it was supposed to be another beat 'em up kind of game, and it fell flat on the beat 'em up part of the game.
Mhm.
So again, like the example I made
I
before,
beg to differ.
it's like playing like Call of Duty and the shooting is terrible. It's like you're not gonna go ahead and play the game and say
Depending
it's
on which
good
gun you use.
just because everything else is entertaining and like the core of the game, what it's supposed to be, is really bad.
Hey,
well, in Black Ops 2 a lot when you shot people, it's like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
didn't,
your
your
bullets
bullets,
go
your bullets
through
don't
people.
count. Yeah.
But there's other-
It's like playing Black Ops 2.
No,
Yeah.
no. Because there was aspects of how you shot in a game that did work. It was just that was more
I'm
so.
sure there's aspects of how you fight in Fighting Force that work fine.
Sure, but what I'm saying is that no, it's not. It's not going to be good.
It's like, sure, I hear you, but what I'm saying is you're
Oh
wrong.
man.
It's
Oh,
just,
jeez.
it's
Not even a
I'm
little
not
wrong,
saying
just
it-
completely wrong.
Didn't he say the same thing when we were talking about? He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, your opinion right now is just it don't matter. I'm like,
Oh no, that was a different situation,
Yeah, no, that was about Shadow of the Colossus.
and it wasn't the fact that it was about the game. It was just let's not get into that. But it's
I
been
felt
recorded.
stabbed in the shoulder. That's what it
Hey,
felt like.
hey, I prepped you for that statement.
All right.
I
all
prepped
right.
you for that statement.
Okay, we're gonna play Fighting Force. Look forward to that because it's gonna be a whole lot of fun. We're gonna figure out a way to make
For
it work.
you.
It's
Jeff
It's gonna be a lot of fun for
Honestly,
you.
a lot of fun
Jeff
for
and
me.
Maurice are gonna play Fighting
You
Force
know,
together.
You gotta touch that game too.
Together.
You gotta touch that game.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm
no,
Mike.
No. We are gonna play that game. So I will see you guys later. We will see you guys later.
Yeah.
Sorry the episode went too long. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
It went too long. What's the time? There's no time limit.
I mean-
Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.
Oh.
Yeah.
In that order, trust me, because I swear, if I found out that you commented before you liked, oh my god. In that order, like, comment, subscribe.
All right. Goodbye, guys.
Goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool.